Hello and welcome back to Bastionland Broadcasting, and it's been a while, to say the least. I'm not. I was going to start with something incredibly inappropriate and say it was much easier to do streams during lockdown, but I have been neglecting this channel, and an opportunity has arisen where something has emerged that I am really interested in looking through and talking about, because it's something that simultaneously it's something I'm really interested in and something I've been really anticipating for a long time, but also it's not the kind of game that I would necessarily normally go for. So I thought it would be interesting to look through and see why I've been all these years talking about this game called Break RPG, which is a game by Reynaldo Madrinian and Greywiz. And this game has been in development a long time. It's a relic from the Google Plus era. I will start visibly aging in front of you if I talk about Google Plus again. But essentially, it's, you can have me try and talk about it all day long, or we can actually look through it, because I have been very generously provided with a preview document. Now, I need to give the public safety announcements here, which are that this is not anywhere close to being the final version of the game. This is a game that is currently on Kickstarter right now. There are still, I think, there's still like 3 weeks left on Kickstarter for this. And the version that I have is a super early version. It's going to have a lot of typos. It's got things that they're going to change about it. It's got, I think some of the artwork is going to change slightly, but it is largely, and it gives us an idea of what the finished book is going to look like. So take everything that I look at with a big pinch of salt. But I've had a little flick through already, and there are some things in here that are quite exciting and quite fun. Now, I have got a cold drink and a hot drink, and I'm going to remember to breathe, because it's been a while and I've forgotten how to do this. So breathing and drinking are important, but we'll also do some reading. So let's talk very briefly about what. In fact, I'm not going to talk about what Break is. Break is going to tell me what Break is. So Break. Do I have to shout it because it's always in capitals and with 2 exclamation points? It just every single time it makes me think of, and I'm about to dun 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 break. I know it's not the Linkin Park RPG, but for me it always will be. So Break is an anime-inspired RPG, which is why people are often surprised when I talk about it, because anime is just not one of my interests. It's not something I've really ever been that interested in. I, like so many other people my age, when I was a teenager and I was playing Pokemon on the Game Boy, I did consume some of the Pokemon anime. But that's kind of the limit of it, really, for me. I'm more interested in the kind of, there's some JRPG influence, there's some heavy Legend of Zelda influence. So you might be thinking, well, if the theme is just kind of if the theme isn't bang on for me, why am I interested in this game? And I'm interested in it because there's so many nice little decisions in the game from what I've seen, and so many cool little design choices, that even though I'm only kind of 50% on board with the theming, the game really pulls me in. So we are not going to sit and read through all of this. Instead, what we're going to do is, I've had a little peek in the document. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make a character. Let's get Notepad up. It's been a while since we did some notepadding. The most OSR piece of software. So we don't need you yet, Notepad. Stand by. So Break is, the list of influences is down here. Like I say, let's get on to what your character actually can be and how this game actually works. So, if you're anything like me, you will straight away notice that when I first saw like the graphic design of what they were doing with Break, it looked like no other RPG I'd seen. And now that sounds like hyperbole, but it looked like so clearly, cleanly, crisply laid out. Lots of really... If you've read Electric Bastion, you'll know that I struggle with like big blocks of text, so that's why I use like bullet points. But the way the text is laid out here, it feels like, and I think this is intentional, it feels like a video game manual in many ways, like it's trying to get the information to you as clearly as possible. And in the years since Break has started development, I think we've seen more of that. But Break is still, I think this layout is still really cool. And just little things like having the chapter sections across the top, so you can tell what chapter you're on at a glance. Having the sort of bookmark type things, I guess, down the side, so that I know if I want to get to the traits section, I can just scroll down until I get to the traits section. Now, this is a chunky document, so I'm putting it's putting my PDF reader to the test. But yeah, as you go through the pages, it shows you where you are. It shows you what sections are nearby. So let's make a character. Artwork, I should say, is by Greywiz. And I've got things to say about the art, but we'll get to it as we go through. In short, I really like it, and I think it does something really interesting. But we'll talk about it as we go. I love that you've got these characters that immediately show you kind of the range of who you can play. So let's do it. Create a PC. You'll need about 15 minutes. That sounds like a challenge. We can do it in 15 minutes. We need to roll some dice. There are some dice on the bottom of each page. You can see you've got your 3d20 here. I know that we're slightly cut off, but you can just about see them. So we will let's take the green dice, okay? So we're going to take the green dice for our rolls. So step 1, your calling. So this is essentially your class. So you can choose or roll on the calling table. We said we'd take the green dice, so we're taking number 17, which is a sage. So our character is going to be a sage. And the one that, if I was choosing, the one that leapt out at me is the factotum, because they're just like kind of a person that has skills and can do stuff, which feels very in-fitting with this kind of anime JRPG kind of thing, where it's not all about being a fighter. So we're going to go with a sage. So you are a learned researcher and practitioner of wizardry. Mana is yours to command, and with it you weave wonder and whimsy. Yes, okay, so we're a wizard. So our might is 6, our deft is 8, our grit is 8, our insight is 10, and our aura is 8. Now I just realised, as I'm sort of complimenting this game a lot, I should have said at the start, this is not a paid review or anything like that. I've backed this myself. I'm not receiving anything. All that I've received is this PDF, which I received from Ronaldo after asking if it's something they'd be interested on me doing on the stream. But I'd already backed the book at this point. So just for full transparency, that's where we're at. 2 hearts. Now let's infuriate some people. 2 hearts. I hate it, but I've committed to it now. No, let's do it properly. 2 hearts. Here we go. These are skills I haven't busted out since I was on MSN Messenger here. Defense is 10. Speed is average. And yeah, attack plus 0. So this is our character. So let's go to the sage section. Now, I was saying about the artwork. The thing I love about the artwork here is, I believe Greywiz has drawn all this. The thing that's really fun about it is, I would assume deliberately, they look like screen caps from like a TV show or from like a cutscene in a video game.
And someone who knows more about art will be able to tell me how they've achieved that. But it almost doesn't look like it doesn't look like it belongs as a still image. It looks like it's a still image taken from an animation, if that makes any sense at all. Like some bits of it are slightly out of focus. It just looks like it's from... You can almost imagine the scene moving, and not just in a way of like any comic book. That they feel like they're screen caps from existing things, and it makes your mind sort of begin to fill in the blanks and think, well, what is this? Who are these characters? This is clearly a real show, and who are they? So, our sage. Let's go to page 58. See, I do wish we'd had this character, the factotum, but we'll come back. Page 58. You know what? We will look through some of these classes very briefly. So we had the factotum, who is kind of the mundane skilled person, and you can have like social stuff or like crafty stuff or explorer stuff. Again, just I really like the sort of information, the way the information is presented here feels very clear. The sneak is your kind of thief person. Your champion is your fighter. Your raider is your kind of fast fighter. You're a more offensive, attacking focused person. The battle princess is the one that I hear a lot of people talking about when they're talking about break. And like I always say with classes, it's nice to have classes that are kind of... Well, I wouldn't say the raider feels generic, but it feels like you could put your own spin on this. But I like that the battle princess feels more specific, like it's immediately thrusting you into having to play a particular type of character that fits in this kind of setting. And the other side you have is the murder princess. I guess like the paladin and the like anti-paladin or whatever. Again, artwork's just really fun. If Greywiz is in the chat, I know that they spoke about coming in the chat if they had time, but if Greywiz is in the chat, did you draw like all of this artwork like yourself? Is this a one-person art experience? The Heretic is really fun because they have kind of all of their abilities, or rather some of their abilities are like names of people. So you got Squire Marlowe, Bushi Miyabi, the Widow Prisma. These are like names of beings. And at the end of the class, you actually see who those sort of beings are that you're drawing from. It's like the, again, to be really reductive, it's like the Warlock having their Warlock Pact. But you kind of have your power is always coming from one of these characters. And it's really fun to like see them as characters as well. Now, I've gone too far because Sage, this was us. So sages are the students of the intensive art of wizardry, learning to manipulate both ambient and residual mana to great effect. Their powers reflect their approach to the study of magic, patient, practical, with a dash of whimsy. So you've got typical sages. It could be a hermit, apprentice, an old witch. Oh, I do like a witch. That is a tempting archetype to go for. But we'll keep it broad for now because we're going to add more elements to our character that's going to help us get a sense for them. So we've got some general talk about it, and then the beef of the classes is the beef of the callings are these abilities. So you choose 3 abilities from the list, and there's 2 here, and there's a load more on this page. In fact, I think we just get these 3. On some of the other classes, you get a choice, but I think for starting abilities, we're going to start with a standard 3 here. So we get Grand Grimoire. So your grimoire is a strange tome that's always at hand. It's filled to the brim with notes of your discoveries and experiences. It's a large personalised book that's always in your hands when needed. Only you can write in it. If you fail an insight check when attempting to recall a piece of information, you can consult your grimoire for clues.
which will allow the GM to reveal a hint to where the elusive piece of information can be found. That's really nice, because, again, if you've read any of my stuff, you'll know how I feel about if you're going to say no or you're going to have a failure, it's quite nice to just put what the players want somewhere else and say, well, you can't have that right now. You'll need to go and either deal with this person or go to this place. So this is like a little bank of ways to do that. Okay, and yeah, if you die, your book manifests, because it vanishes when you don't need it. Nice, okay. So we've got our Grand Grimoire. Staff. So the Sage's Staff could be an elegant wand, a gnarled walking stick. We can push with it, which has a few standard ways it can be used, and we can make it glow with light. Yeah, okay. And what if you're interested at all in some of the ideas in this game, it's worth going back to the Bastion and podcast episode that I did with Ronaldo Madrinian, the author of Break, and we spoke about some games in there, and I feel like I can see those influences very clearly. There was, what was it called? Is it called Old School Hack? Have I made that up? There was one of the games that Ray chose was a game that I think is called Old School Hack. It's putting me on the pressure now. And some of the class abilities here remind me of those class abilities, and that they're very kind of, they feel very kind of like iconic, and they're like the core things that you need for that character, presented in quite a straightforward, simple way, but in a quite impactful way, rather than having it just be like +1s here and there. Prestidigitonium, one of the earliest tricks you learned was how to animate objects. Okay, so you can coax a single object to life and perform the function it was originally designed for. The object needs to have been used within the last 3 months to retain the residual mana. And it needs an insight check, and you can make it do these things. Okay, cool. So essentially we have like a pretty straightforward push and light spell and a pretty straightforward animate object kind of spell. And then as we level up, we will choose more of these things, which are kind of like spells. Yeah, a very useful cloud. This is horrifying. And then we have our gear allowance here. So we can only wear light armor, we can only use standard or concealed weapons, we can use some missile weapons. And this is, as we advance, our numbers are going to go up. Now, Greywiz said something on Twitter that made me laugh. Which was they were retweeting my my link saying, "Oh, here's the stream where I'm going to be looking through Break," and Greywiz said something to the effect of, "Oh, it's the guy that loves simplicity is going to tear apart this chubby game," and it is a chubby game. It's a game that's got much more in the way of like mechanical little details than perhaps I would put in my games. But I think people who are coming, especially from like 5th edition D&D and people who liked 4th edition D&D, weirdly, I think will find a familiarity in that. And it's presented in such a clear way that I don't find it off-putting in a way that I do with other games. So there is a lot of, I don't even want to say crunch, because it's more just there's lots of little moving parts to it, but it's presented so clearly that I don't find it too daunting. Which, yeah, if you're gonna make a game with lots of stuff in it, you've got to present that information clearly, or else you're gonna lose me completely. Species. So we said we'd roll. Well, you know what? We said we'd roll. But our roll down here that we said we'd take the green dice is number 1.
which would be a native human. It's worth noting there are two types of human in this setting. There are native humans and dimensional strays. So these are people who have been dragged from like our world into this JRPG anime world, which I think is a really fun concept to have. Do we want to be a human? A native human wizard? I think we can do better than that. We're going to choose our our species here, because there was one that leapt out at me. I always like to try and choose the one that's perhaps the less obvious fit. I have to say, and hear me out. I'm going to say I hate the elves in this game. They look so creepy. And I think that I'm kind of meant to be like, find them kind of gross and disturbing to look at. And yeah, testament to the artwork that it evokes that kind of feel. See, a goblin wizard would be fun, but I'm kind of like, I'm on a bit of a goblin break because I feel like the world has taken goblin and run with it a little bit too much. You can be like a cat person, a perfected being. I mean, I'm going to go with one of these guys, the Groon. So these are, I guess, kind of like ogre type things. You're large, brutish, and irrepressible. Your robust frame can soak up punishment, and your powerful limbs can dish it out. So yeah, I'm picking one of these guys because it's the least obvious choice for a wizard, I guess. Although I don't know, the biomechanoid. No, we're immediately changing to this, like a robot wizard. It's pretty fun. So we're going to be a biomechanoid sage. So you're a relic of the past, neither human nor machine. You have awoken in an unfamiliar world without purpose or direction. You want to belong, but never can. Okay, so with medium, we've got 10 inventory slots. This is all standard. We get a few abilities, and we get a quirk. So let's go to our abilities. So 100 and... Let's get this right. Okay, so 105. So we'll have a quick glance at the other characters. They are incredibly naked. So, you know, that's a plus or minus, depending on your outlook. This guy is extremely naked. These are very naked. But you've got your different species here. And they have kind of... Again, I keep drawing parallels to D&D, which I'm sure is infuriating to Ray and Greywiz, who made the game. But I mean it in a positive way, in that things like this remind me of like... My first like D&D books that I owned were the third edition like core books, the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. And in those books, while I ended up not liking the third edition system, and I like it less now than I did back then, I didn't like the system, but I spent ages looking through those books because they had all this weird little art, and looking back now, it might not seem like much, but at the time, it was really evocative art in those books. Like, especially like I remember in the Dungeon Master's Guide, just like all these little details that made it feel like you had a kind of a proper, like, it felt like you had like a book from the world talking about like these things as if they were real, and the way the pictures were drawn. And I get a little bit of that vibe here in the way that it's not just a heroic picture of the species like stood posing with their sword. There are some of that, but then here where we're talking about the species, you get these kind of like it's trying to like really get across the idea, and you know, just showing them as babies is like a really, really unique kind of detail to have. So it reminds me of the things that I like about that kind of RPG, even if that's not the kind of RPG that I choose to play much nowadays. It gives me those same good feelings that I got with like third edition D&D when I first started getting into it. So these guys come from eggs. I hate seeing a character in a nappy, but there we go. The goblins grow out of, like, this is how goblins are made. This is how dwarves are made. And oh no, I hate them so much. I hate the elves so much. I really hope that I'm supposed to, and if I'm not supposed to hate them, I'm so sorry. Biomechanoid, here we go. So we've got some options. They awoke from a digital coma to a world unrecognisable to the one they left behind. Okay. So we get a few abilities. Not of flesh and blood, which I gather essentially means, yeah, there'll be some results on the injury table, won't affect us. We're immune to like poisons and stuff, obviously. We don't need to eat. And we recharge instead of sleep. So this is just kind of a bit of, it's kind of a common sense one, really. So we're not living. Let's put it down here. And personal analytics. So if you focus, you can detect the general distance and direction of any living creatures. We've got like a scanner. Sources of great energy. That's cool. So combined with like our grimoire, I guess they're kind of like an information gatherer, this character. And then when we get to rank 6, we can get a bit stream, which lets us talk to relics and stuff. Nice. So the fact that we're medium, it affects our inventory. We're not going to get too down in the weeds about specific stuff like that. And now homeland and history. So our species isn't necessarily our like background. It's not like because we are a biomechanoid, we come from biomechanoid land. We also get to pick like a place that we're from. And another thing that really reminds me of like my good memories of like reading through D&D books, you've got languages. And you would think that I'm against this. I'm against books that have all these lore dumps when it's something like, oh, here are all the languages of the world. And looking through it, sometimes I will see those sections, look through them, and it feels like, here's another thing that I've got to learn, and I have to choose for my character, and I don't care, and they're not described in an interesting way. But here, I like that they are pretty straightforward, and they are another way of telling you about the world. Now, I don't know exactly how this works. I don't know exactly why this feels good to me and this feels interesting to me, but other ones don't. I think because we've already kind of bought into the world because of the presentation and what we've seen already with our character, I'm already kind of a little bit interested in what these languages are. So we get a common language, and we get to choose a language based on where we're from. We'll roll our homeland. 14. We're from the Blazing Garden, a hot, lush place filled with glittering cities, grand ruins, and titanic beasts. So this world, I think one of the things I read later on in this world is that the sun is like broken. So like the sun machine has stalled and is stuck in place. So the wistful dark is always dark, and Twilight Meridian is always like at sunset, and Blazing Garden is like middle of the day, all day long. And again, it feels very JRPG. It feels very like going to this different area is like going to a different area in like a video game, which if you go hard into that, I enjoy it. And this game does go, firmly into that tone. So we can choose Bright Speech, Hoshi Ban, or Fade Song. So Bright Speech is the chosen song of the Deva and servants of the Bright. So it's like angelic language. Hoshi Ban it's an odd, speedy chatter brought to the outer world by the Rainiko. They're like the cat people, right? And Fade Song. Melodious tongue has the onerous syntax, which transforms the simplest sentence into a wondrous tale. We'll take that because that sounds cool. So we know Fade Song. We know Low Speech and Fade Song. Because, I figure our robot is like a sage, so they might be interested in stories, so that's a good one to know. So
Our homeland gives us a bonus language, and we get some purviews. Now, this is one of the things that really, as I was going through, I was kind of like, I knew that purviews were kind of this game's version of skills, essentially. That's what I had gleaned from looking through it so far. And so I was expecting purviews to be something like, you've got a purview in, if you're from the mountain region, you've got mountain climbing and, I don't know, survival and like goat herding or whatever. But they're actually quite different. So we're in the Blazing Garden, so let's get to the Blazing Garden. Blazing Garden histories. I love that each area has like these backgrounds. So this one's got like 12 backgrounds. And again, very much like the failed careers, just looking through these things tell you so much about this area that it's like a nice little chunk of like setting guide as well as actually giving you what your character needs. So we'll do a roll again. So we got 6. So we were a street rat. I'm not doing the song. We were a street rat, like a robot street rat. Let's see. You survived the gutters of the glittering city, taking your chances and evading the law. Maybe bigger and better opportunities await outside the city's walls. So it's when you see street rat, you imagine like a street urchin, like a kid running around. I think maybe because our guy is like a robot, maybe we like didn't have part of our body for a long time. So we were kind of like scraping by. And now that we've... Yeah, and now that we've kind of... Maybe as part of like gathering the knowledge that we needed to become a sage, we were able to like grow and age. I don't know. I guess we don't have to have been a little kid when we were a street rat. But purviews, here we go. So purview for street rat, you might think it's going to be pickpocketing, navigating urban areas, and stealth, but it's not. It's phrased differently. Keeping quiet and staying hidden. Okay, hiding, sure. Death-defying acrobatics, chicanery, and general mischief. They are phrased much more like, much closer, I think, to things like aspects in Fate. So if you look at some of the other ones, you've got making yourself heard, remembering the important stuff, handling things larger than you. Like, they're quite broad. Like, the beast handler could just have like animal handling, but instead they have handling things larger than you. So if they're trying to do the ultimate boring RPG example of play and moving a big rock, they could say, well, I think my purview applies here because I'm handling something larger than me. And I think this sort of thing is quite difficult to do. In games like Fate, I found it quite difficult because it's put on the players to come up with those things. And same with like Rissus, you have to like come up with your own cliches in that game, which are these little very broad descriptions of your skills. But here, it's it feels like the game has done the hard work for you. And because the hard part with these Fate-style aspects is coming up with a cool aspect that is evocative and also quite broad in its use, but not too broad. The one that I saw when I did a little skim through this book earlier. Oh, there we go. There's our Fade song. That's the language that we learned. It was the fisherman. So having a fisherman background in like D&D would mean getting some skills in like boat handling and fishing maybe. But here you've got things like, the one that really stuck with me was using the right bait for the job. Because yes, you could use that if you were trying to catch a fish, but this could be used for so many other things. And knowing when the tide is turning. The first time I read through it, I took this so literally. I was like, I read this and I thought, knowing when the tide is turning, and I was like, what use is that? Like, when are you going to need to know about when the tide is turning? But it's not just knowing when the tide is turning, it's knowing when the tide is turning of a situation. And I really like that. So we were a street rat, weren't we? So we got keeping quiet, staying hidden, death-defying acrobatics, chicanery, and general mischief. So it's good to know that anything we do with general mischief, we're going to get, I think it's like a +2 or something if you have a purview. We get a gem, not exactly yours. We have a concealed weapon, 2 solvent units, and some adventuring gear. I'm not going to write that down because I want to move on. But yeah, these are so fun. And I would be much more, the fate aspects thing. I remember like the first time I came across that was in a game called Spirit of the Century, and it was the first time I'd seen that thing done, where you had these very broad aspects. But it had so much like guidance for like, here's how to come up with them. But I find it so much better to just be assigned them like randomly, especially if you don't choose it, especially if you roll it and you get a record etcher. So, you know, you have a steady hand. So anything that you need to do that requires a steady hand, you're getting a bonus. Working the crowd. I just love it. I think that's great. And again, the artwork here is super nice for all these characters. Oh, so these are the other world history. So these are if you play the, what's the word? The extra dimensional human, so that the normal person that's been dragged into this world, you might be like a not in education or employment person. So you know trivia and finding the path of least resistance. Sharp, cynical judgment. Oh god, this is. I mean, I guess I am in employment, but this one speaks to me. So yeah, there we go. Anyway, traits. So your traits are, you just get a positive trait and a negative trait, which just modifies your aptitudes, which are like it's these base scores, this might, deft, grit, and so on. So what did we get? We got 18. So we get +1 aura, so we're kind of charming. And we'll take the one from the previous page. Number 9 on the negative trait, -1 grit. We're gutless and delicate. Well, we've had a rough time. Like this robot was like a street rat robot. And then finally your quirk. So the quirk is a unique mental or physical feature that alters your character in some way, providing you with a distinct set of advantages or disadvantages. So because we're a biomechanoid, we get to roll on the special biomechanoid quirk. But other people would be rolling on inheritor species for like the native like species of the world and the old world. It's like the split between dwarf, elf, and goblin. Yeah, they're more likely to have like an eldritch quirk, whereas these species are more likely to have something fate based. Okay, so 8. We get a spirit quirk, which I guess makes sense. But I'm cheating. We're cheating. We're taking a robotic quirk because I really want to have something. I feel like I need to know more about like the robotic side of our body. So, robot quirks. Where are you? Well, we can just look down here, can't we? This side of the page, we can see robotic quirks are here. Number 6, we have sproing sprockets. Oh god. Your thick legs house giant springs that end in large metal boots. Your incredible leaps are accompanied by a loud and distinctive sproing sound. We gain supernatural leaping. So we're Inspector Gadget. Okay, cool. Supernatural leaping. That was somewhere. Where is it? 107. Let's go see it. Supernatural leaping. So yeah, we can jump around in battle, basically. And then I think finishing details. We're kind of there. Describing your character.
We're going to be kind of vague. I'm not going to sit here and tell you about my character, but I feel like we've got some interesting stuff here. I think Street Rat. So hang on, let's put Street Rat in. Street Rat combined with Spring Sockets is definitely suggesting a kind of very athletic style of play, which is kind of at odds slightly with our Sage character, but I like that. I mean, we're not super dexterous, so maybe he's kind of clumsy, but he's always jumping, bouncing around. But the main thing is our insight. I'm sorry, he's turning into Inspector Gadget, although I guess Inspector Gadget wasn't that insightful. In many ways, he wasn't a great inspector, but that's a topic for another stream. So, go shopping. So we get D20 coins, 3 coins. We said blue, right? So, we got 20 coins. Wow, 20 coins. Now, again, this is another page that like grabbed me, and it was like I was, I think I was 16 when I picked up the 3rd edition D&D books. I don't often I am so numb to seeing like boring currency systems in games, but here I just like it. It's just presented in such a charming way that the very like petty currency is stones, which isn't literally stones all the time. It can be stones, but it can also be bits of shell, pebbles, shells, bits of cut glass, or teeth. It's just like if you're going to throw some pennies at someone, you're actually giving them stones in the local currency. Coins are real coins, so that's used for most normal things, and gems are what are used for the big purchases. And again, I don't know why, because so many times when games do this and they get kind of indulgent and start showing me little things from their world, it's not interesting to me. But here it feels fun and interesting. And then here are the weapons, and there's weapons are just like types, really. So being a sage, we're a bit limited, really. We can only have a concealed or a standard weapon. And here, I saw this and I was like, oh wow, you get to choose between these different types of weapon. But they're the same. So standard weapons are weapons that anyone can use it. It takes up 1 slot and costs 10 coins. And when your attack roll is 20 or higher, it does an extra heart of damage. And whether you're taking a tunnel truncheon or a squire sword or a bandit razor, these are all, it's your choice. You can just make up whatever you want, and I really like that. Again, there is, I do, part of the reason I did that in Into the Odd and Electric Bastion is not having like these giant lists of like prescriptive weapons, but having like simple weapon, like hand weapon, field weapon, noble weapon, because then it's just like a nice little bit of character that you can give to your character by choosing which weapon they use specifically. But it's not a complete free-for-all. There are still quite a few categories. And again, they're telling you about the world. And you can also have custom weapons that have like extra tags on them, which make it cost a lot more. And there's some examples here. I love the Spade Blade. A favoured weapon of the Knights of the Open Road, who clear away earth and rock just as often as they dispatch evildoers. Lovely little bit of world building, just tucked in there. Armour is very much the same. You've got categories, and you just choose. So we could wear light armour, so we could choose one of these, or we could just make up something similar and say, well, we bought some armour that looks like this. And again, you can make fancy special armours, special shields, outfits that affect how people respond to you and how they give you like benefits to certain things. Did I imagine there was hat rules? Did I make this up? Let me come back to that. Maps are kind of like a thing that's mechanized in the game. There's a little system for like what type of map do you have, and like buying maps of like new areas. So again, it just feels like that kind of Legend of Zelda JRPG thing of like getting the map is like a
a key thing. Like finding the dungeon map in Zelda, like Link to the Past, is like a really big moment in that dungeon. Consumables, oh god, we'll come back to these pudge grubs. You're not ready for the pudge grub. If you've not heard about the pudge grubs, you are not ready. Greywiz says there's no hat rules. Well, I think what I was thinking was the outfits would kind of like, it implies a hat. So my house rule number 1 is that if you're going to choose an outfit, you have to describe the hat. Romain is saying it's surprisingly hefty in rules. It really is. And, you know, I've always said, like, I'm not going to come into this and say that this is the type of system that I would always play myself, but I can't wait to get this book. Like, I'm so excited to read through it. And it might be something that I play to dip into that kind of crunchy side of things, because that kind of crunch, and this isn't like a high crunch game. I think it's higher for me because my tastes are so low in crunch. But I think the crunch is much this analogy is all over the place, but the crunch is much easier to swallow if the flavor is good. That's the tagline for a breakfast cereal. Yeah, like I could see myself getting to grips with this crunch because I already kind of care about what's going on. In some games, they start throwing crunch at you before you care about what's going on, and that's when they lose me, when I'm being told about all these little systems and little rules, and I feel like I still don't know what we're doing yet. I still don't know whether I care yet about what we're doing. Whereas here, I want to be involved. Combustibles, miscellaneous lemons. You can have a Game Gal Advance or a Peach Pod. And followers. Right, bear with me. I said I was going to drink, and I haven't drunk this coffee yet, so I'm going to slip aside and drink it quickly. Wait, tacos for breakfast? Did I miss this? Or is that a new invention by Zachary Scott in the chat? If tacos hasn't been done yet, someone needs to get onto that. Companions. Followers, you can, get followers, which makes a lot of sense. And then here we go. This is one of the first spreads that I saw when Break was like reaching the point of nearly being ready for Kickstarter. I forget if it was Gray or Ray that shared it. And we just saw, where are we? This. And I was like, I'm in. You've got me. Like, this alone either gets you excited for the game, or it tells you, this is probably not one for me. But I just love the way these are designed. The Pudge Grub. Right, let's get it out of the way, because the Pudge Grub is simultaneously the best and worst thing in this game. Like, look at him. This is the Pudge Grub. About the size and weight of a ripe water... Now, let's start again. About the size and weight of a water... I'm getting too emotional, I can't speak. So the Pudge Grub is about the size and weight of a ripe watermelon. These bright, doughy creatures waddle harmlessly all over the outer world. They are easy prey, but survive through frequent asexual division. Most commonly used as a low-maintenance livestock, they also have practical uses for adventurers. So I saw this and I thought, like a nice little pet, right? I mean, we're in the... Is this section actually called pets? I guess it's technically... pets. Yeah, pets, like... Pets are animals that you, love, right? And you look after. Pudge Grub. What can we do with the Pudge Grub? Okay, his stats are pretty shit, but he's a grub. He's going to be like a nice, friendly companion, right? No, he's a directable decoy. So if you point them in one direction, they will always trundle away until prompted to stop or go in another direction, much like a clockwork toy. It's making me so sad.
They are a delicious decoy. Their sweet smell and succulent appearance make pudge grubs irresistible to bestial predators, who must make a grit check to avoid stalking them. Squashy defense. They take less damage from crushing things. They are edible, and if butchered, they provide 3 units of hardy rations. Oh God, I hate it so much, but it's also really funny. I think if I was playing with a group of players and one of us had a pudge grub, and we were letting them like reproduce by splitting, and we were using them as decoys and edible decoys, and as butchering them for food, and people knew they looked like this, I think there would be friction in the group. This is what's going to cause copies of Break to be thrown between players. Greywiz says in the chat that apparently the intent with these is that they are living tofu. That doesn't excuse it. Right, let's move on, because I could talk about them for too long. You've got all these cool animals you can get. Again, this is kind of horrifying. Vehicles. This walker's great. Properties. Breakfasts. Is there mention of thacos in breakfasts? No. Post-pause services, so I guess like a postal dog. Character rank is like advancing and all this stuff. Allegiance is like alignment. Allegiance is a much better word than alignment, I think, for what most games kind of want alignment to be. So I'm glad that we've got it in here. If you take a lot of dark abilities or bright abilities, you might end up with like a gift, basically. Most of which are kind of like flavor, but it's just like a cool thing that if you're playing one of these characters that really leans into the sort of cosmic conflict that's going on in this world, you'll get like a weird physical reward. Playing the game. So we're about halfway through the book and we're just getting to the rules, and I'm aware we've been talking for like 50 minutes. I'm not going to get really stuck into like the crunch of the rules of playing the game. I will skim over them very quickly, because then there's a little bit at the end that I really want to talk about. So, I did have a quick look at this. I love the way it's presented, but the rules themselves are kind of what you'd expect. They're pretty straightforward, standard. Where are we? Let's find them. So you got checks and contests, which are they essentially boil down to like roll under. There are some modifiers to that, but essentially, if our sage is doing something relating to insight, they're going to roll a d20, possibly 2 d20s with advantage or disadvantage. They might get +2 or +4, depending on whether they've got like a major or minor bonus, or a -2 or -4 if they've got a major or minor, whatever the opposite of bonus is in this game. I'm using all the wrong words, but essentially, if you're familiar with that kind of system, you'll walk straight into it. So you're essentially rolling under on a d20 is kind of the basic mechanic of the game. And again, it's nicely laid out. The example of players breaking down a wooden door, and when I saw that, I was like, come on, you're better than that, Ray. This isn't a good example, but I was proven wrong, because while you start with this boring example of breaking down a wooden door as a might check, they use it here to say, well, yes, but if the PCs are not under any pressure, the check won't be necessary. They'll eventually break it down, but there's going to be consequences. So this was a really nice little subversion of my expectations here. Contests are, opposed checks, and they work pretty much like you'd expect. And you can do linked contests that are like, I guess, like the skill challenges of the old 4th edition. Does 5th have skill challenges? I'm so out of the loop. Journeying. So you have like a really cool little system here for going between places. There's a system for, again, definitely not the final artwork here because the resolution is all weird. You have a system for drawing maps, and like navigating through terrain and along different routes. And you have a little system for what happens when you get lost as well. So you might end up wandering off and then rejoining the route halfway through. You might end up taking a wrong turn and you end up at a different destination. You could wind up going the worst possible result, which is you walk all day and then you realise, we're back where we started. And it's really cool. It's a really nice, straightforward little point crawl system, and I'm really glad that it's in there. You've got rules for camping, foraging. I need to check these in more detail because I'm working on a game called Mythic Bastion, and I don't like to talk about it, but it involves some similar things where there's moving around and camping and like a bit of wilderness kind of focus. So, like I say, it's called Mythic Bastion, and don't tell anyone about it, but it's a game that I'm working on now. So yeah. You've got exploration procedure for like adventure sites. You've got a sample adventure site, which is pretty cool. It's got this system. So combat uses a kind of, let me find the relevant section. It uses this zone type system. And you have this kind of, when you're exploring the adventure site, you need to say who's in front of each other. So I would say you don't need like miniatures for this, but just because the characters look so cool, I would kind of at least want like little standees of my character, possibly in like pixel art. I think that could look kind of fun. And then you can use these very kind of broad stroke maps with like areas, and it's almost like I hate to say like a little combat minigame because that's kind of playing it down. But it's a very, very simple combat system that still has a bit of kind of tactical play around it. Again, it's very JRPG. It's very much like, you know, the characters are like lined up against each other. It's got a bit more than that, but it's also not as involved as like moving one step at a time across the battlefield. What do we miss? There was a negotiation system. I really like this exchange here. Social combat I've never quite been convinced by, but I think this is a pretty solid take on it. You still have to like say what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and there's guidance to try and be like how to make it still like reasonable. But I'd like to give this one a try. Again, this artwork, I hate to keep going on about it. If you just saw this in isolation, you would think these are like screen grabs from like a TV series. It's really cool. So, combat is kind of like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, combat is kind of like pretty standard. It's an area-based system. You roll to hit. The higher you roll to hit, you will stand a chance of doing like extra damage. You got little tags you can put on different areas of the battlefield. Movement is very, straightforward. It's got like a little stunt system. Again, it's kind of in depth, but it's all very straightforward. And the thing that I like is, I've said before that I feel like granularity in games is sometimes used as a bit of a crutch. And I'd sometimes say this is a bit of a hot take to try and just like stir up people. But like I've said before, like if a game is good, you should be able to kind of make it work with just D6s. If your game relies on like having a D20 and plus ones, then almost like try and make it work with very coarse granularity of a D6, and then you might still decide you want to use a D20. Like I use D20s in games, but you almost don't want to think that granularity is innately interesting because it's not what makes a game good. You can use those dice and you can have that granularity, but you need to have the actual fun bit of the game in there as well, at kind of the core. The reason why this is relevant here is damage. Again, to pull back to D&D, damage in D&D, you're talking what, like you're talking like tens of HP for like a low level enemy, getting into hundreds of HP for like big boss enemies. I'm sure there's some that have like thousands, but you're kind of chipping away at these like big sacks of hit points.
Here we have hearts and a starting character. So what is ours had 2 hearts. And a normal hit will do like 1 heart of damage. And like generally like a big hit will do like 2. And I'm sure there are ways to get more damage. But to start with, most things are doing like 1 or 2 hearts. And when you get taken down to 0 hearts, you roll an injury. And the first time you roll your injury, you look at the green dice. So let's say I rolled a 15 on my first injury roll. We'd have a broken arm. If we fight on and get injured again, let's say we roll a 12, we're looking at the orange die this time. So now we've got a broken leg and a broken arm. So do we really want to keep fighting? If we do decide to keep fighting, the final injury roll will be the third injury roll will be on a red die. So now all of these results are on the table. Whereas before, the worst thing that can happen to you on a first injury is that you're going to get knocked out or a broken leg. On your second injury, the worst that's going to happen is you could get a mortal wound, which means you're like dying. But once you get onto your third injury, only then does it open up a quiet death or a messy death. And that's really cool. That's kind of doing the same thing that I wanted to do with my games, where it's more interesting to be like on the edge of death than it is to be like suddenly splattered against the wall out of nowhere. If the players decide to keep pushing their luck and fighting and carrying on when they're injured, then if they get a messy death, it feels a lot more fair. It's really cool, and having it split this way on 3 different, almost like 3 different tables using the same results, is really nice. And just the way it's laid out, like I wouldn't have thought to lay it out this way, but it makes it so straightforward. Injuries, we're not going to get down in details. There is a system for like fighting giant things, which is pretty fun. But even this big thing, so we said about like a big, like what's like a dragon got in 5th edition, like hundreds of hit points, like 600, I don't know, hundreds of hit points. Here, even this giant thing, it's split up into areas, and each area only has 5 hearts. So each heart of damage is significant. So if you're hitting, you're going to do something significant to it. We've got some ailments, which are like conditions. Some of them are quite fun. Being chibbed, so like make you small. Putrefied is like horrible. It's like you're like poisoned, but worse. There's like a disheartened. Yeah, dispirited is very anime. And we have a little downtime system. So, and there's like a little bit of a kind of social. It feels very much like a toolkit. This is the thing. Even though it is crunchy, I feel like I wouldn't need to like learn all of this before we set foot in a game. I feel like I would want to kind of dip in and out of these systems. Alex is asking me questions about like whether you regain all your hearts after injury. I don't know. I'm not going to go too deep into it. But that's one perhaps that Gray can answer in the chat. There is a... Where is it? Socializing? No, where is it? Social bonds. There's like a system for like social bonds, which one of the character types that I was looking at had like... One of their class abilities was linked to like having social bonds, so they're encouraged to have these kind of social moments with other characters. And I know this is, again... Even though it feels very like Powered by the Apocalypse games use this kind of thing a lot, where you have these social connections. But here it feels like a thing you can kind of choose to engage with or not engage with as a player. It's kind of like a tool in the toolbox rather than something that's like really firmly in there. We have a crafting system, some good looking food. What are these? Additives. Mistake sugar.
So you can like lure people in to eat this thing. Again, there's just like a lot of like really fun little things in there. This is why I'm so excited to just like, I'm just excited to look through this book in the same way that when I got some of the first RPG books I ever had, I was just like looking through them in wonder. And I still get that with books, but it gets harder to trigger that effect inside me. And this game does that. I just want to like have this book and be able to just like read through it. And even if I never play the game, there's just so much like fun stuff in here. So crafting system, and now we're into the setting. So the final section. No, it's not the final section. It is the third section of 5. Right. Well, we're gonna speed things up. The setting, we're going to look through this in some broad strokes. Believe it or not, like I said, I'm normally like anti-timeline, but it's presented so nicely here. It's not just a big wall of bad fiction. It feels like it's just so coolly presented that it makes such a difference. So it's talking about the different areas, some typical adventures that can happen in those areas, other places you can go. I feel like if you're playing this game, I would almost certainly want to use this other world as a thing, like have it function like between our world and like the fantasy world. It feels like it's really kind of set up for that. Game Master's Guide. I had a look through here. There's lots of good advice. I'm not going to dip into them too much because I'll be here all day. We have guidance for villains, and then we have this kind of almost like a die drop table where you can just, well, you know what, I'm not going to say I invented the 2-column table, but it reminds me of like Spark tables in Bastionland, where you've got you roll 2 things and then kind of combine them to get like a unique result. So let's do it. So what's our villain's motivation? 19. When it's over, I'll be more powerful than ever. 5. Their quirk is they're pushy about being in power. Maybe there is a pushy person behind this villain. So it's a villain that's been kind of like being pushed from behind the scenes to be even more powerful, like a more interesting Lady Macbeth and Macbeth relationship. What's their profession? We'll loop around. So 14 and 19. They're an ambitious philosopher. Okay. An ambitious philosopher villain. Clothing colour, 5. Earthen tones. Prominent accessory, 14. Chunky belt. So they're kind of like they feel like quite a humble philosopher that's being pushed to do something villainous. And this is background characters. So 5 and 14. Docile and flamboyant. So they're surrounded by docile, flamboyant people. So while some of these feel like contradictions, it gives you a starting point and it gives you some sparks here. Creating a settlement. Again, lots of these spark style tables. I do quite like these little guys. I like that they're so small. Creating an adventure. So the bit that I'm looking, again, just loads of tables, it's great. The thing that I'm looking for here. Adversaries. So these are your enemies. So they're presented over like each, so they're kind of split into sections. So you can see down here, like drones is not just one enemy. If I go to the drones section, drones are precursors to the biomechanoids, simpler machines built to perform repetitive tasks, and they're now flickering back to life. So there's a few different types of drone presented, and in each one, you've got kind of how they're presented in like the standard way, but then you've also got customization. So they might be fitted with limbs that strike as different weapon types, fitted with a mender's kit. They might be able to hover, climb, or float. And in other ones, it talks about like using, sort of giving these adversaries abilities from other classes and things like that, and just it really encourages you to take these monsters and change them up, and kind of create variations of them, which I really like for this style of game. The monsters are quite in depth; they're actually like really quite crunchy, but I do still like the way they're presented here. Like this guy here. This guy is horrible. Murderous skybound tyrant. Yeah, they terrorize populated areas. I bet they do. So they can be equipped with mana blasts that cause ailments like petrified or blinded. They have a lot of weird abilities, and when they die, every monster has like a yield. So it's like loot that they drop basically, but they are also like, it's their eyes. So you can take their eyes and they do this weird thing. I like the mood table. And yeah, kill servants. It's just a really nice, unique set of encounters in here as well. This guy is pretty good. The Proud Hound Sellsword. He is pretty good. And I like that you have the Skelly Men. And where is it? Something in here about their... Yeah, they tried to take a hostage to later carefully remove their eyes and tongue. So the skeletons in this game, they really want eyes and they really want a tongue. Because when they get one, they become the Skelly Master. And now he's got his tongue, he's lording it up, drinking his wine, tasting his wine. All these other skeletons are like, we get it, Steve, you've got a tongue now. And they can't say it because they've got no tongue. Making skeletons interesting is the sign of a good writer. And the Skeleton Monarch, of course. Oh, and I liked that in the Skelly Men, the yield is a clacking cranium. A Skelly Man's skull remains animated even when the rest of the body is crushed. While it will try to be dangerous, gnashing its teeth pointlessly, it's a harmless novelty item, so you can take that skull with you. Okay, so let's do a quick skim through these adversaries. It talks about reskins here and creating them from scratch. It's a really nice little set of guidelines here. Again, it reminds me of some of the good bits of like 4th edition D&D had this kind of guidance, which was really nice. You got an example. You got some reskin examples. I know that I don't know what word to use, but it says a lot about me that when I saw these dogs, I thought it was a mange bandit rather than a mange bandit. I felt a lot of shame in that moment. And then the appendix is super nice because all that stuff that we just said about how this is actually quite a crunchy system, and in many ways the rules are a little bit daunting to begin with. You've got a nice appendix that kind of summarizes the basics of how everything works. Most of those little subsystems are just summarized here. So once you've skimmed through the book once, hopefully you can just kind of look at these sections and be like, okay, well, ailments, they're all here. How does the crafting system work? Here's a little reminder. And a very, very, very thorough index. So that is Break. And as I said at the start of this video, in case you missed that, this is not a paid video. The Kickstarter is doing very well, so it does not need my help. But I thought this would be an interesting one to look through, and it's very selfish of me because I've just been looking forward to this book for a long time, and I thought this would be like
a cheat way to get hold of the PDF early. As mentioned previously, this is not the final PDF. There is going to be, I think, quite a lot of like proofreading and little tidying things up a bit for the final book, but it's largely there, I think. And if you want to back it, it's on Kickstarter now. I think there's still a few weeks left on the Kickstarter. If you are joining the stream for the first time, you can find out more about what I do at bastionland.com. There are links to the newsletter that I send out weekly, the Bastionland Presser. There is the Bastionland Discord server if you want to talk about my games, and you can find links to buy Into the Odd and Electric Bastionland. And of course, you can find a link to the currently free playtest version of Mythic Bastionland, which is my next game. And if you really want to support things, you can go to Patreon, where I can't do the finger, patreon.com/Bastionland to help support these streams and everything I do. And I think we're going to leave it there. I'm hoping I can do some more of these streams. I'm hoping that I've heard like that people are enjoying the read-throughs. I think it's an interesting way of doing it. I never want to be like reading through things that I don't like and saying like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. So I only really want to do read-throughs of things that I like and talk about why I think they're interesting and look at what they're doing that is fun. But perhaps next week is a busy week, but perhaps after that, you never know, there might be another stream headed your way. So until then, thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.